Welcome to the Fully Charged Show podcast. This week's really a very nice episode for me because I'm talking to my partner in crime, the CEO of the Fully Charged Show, Mr. Daniel Caesar. Dan, welcome to the pod.
Back at you, Robert, the chairman, founder, thought leader, influencer. I know you love all those titles.
Oh, God, every single one of those I find extremely uncomfortable. But no, it's always good to remind ourselves, because it's quite easy to fall into a slough of despond about the world. You know, there's a lot. We could do a long list of things that aren't terribly wonderful in the world. And I think it's worth, whenever you and I get together and we then swap news of what's going on and what we've just been hearing, I generally come out of that feeling slightly more optimistic than more pessimistic, because there is amazing things happening.
I can't believe what's happened this year already.
Yeah.
We're only in Q2, to use my CEO speak.
Oh, yeah, Q2. Oh, yeah.
And
going forward, we're now in Q2.
And, I've probably turned the kind of the regular news off, but I'm still very much in touch with what's going on in the energy and transport sector. And it just seems to be, this whole thing seems to be picking up pace. I mean, I cannot believe that it's not talk of pubs up and down the country, that different battery chemistries. That maybe people are talking about other stuff like strikes and the economy and whether they can afford to eat anymore. But, for me, any pub I go into, the conversation is batteries. That's because I'm there. And that's probably why I don't get invited anymore as well, to be honest. But I cannot believe what we're seeing with the new chemistries that are coming much, much more quickly than a lot of us anticipated. The emerging car companies and all the things around that. It's like a freight train now. And I really think the next year or two is going to completely flip the table upside down. I mean, just having regular arguments with people on LinkedIn who probably aren't as close to it, who are totally unaware of LFP batteries, that don't require cobalt, and totally unaware of sodium-ion batteries and other chemistries that are coming. And if you think about the impacts that they could have, it is absolutely enormous. So I'm just blown away by what we're seeing. And I'm probably the most prone to hyperbole of all of us, I think, but it is, it is an extraordinary time.
Well, and also, I mean, I think one of the things that I have to remind myself, and we both experienced this yesterday, is that other things that are happening outside, like immediately vehicles, but it's not even technology, it's regulation, legislation, how the grid works has got, we went to this, Dan and I attended this conference yesterday, or a kind of announcement conference run by OVO Energy in London in the UK. They're a UK-based energy company, very, very innovative, set up by, an extraordinary, their original founder, amazing guy, who regular viewers of the Fully Charged Show would have seen me interview when we went to see the vertical takeoff and landing aircraft in Bristol, because he's very involved with that now. But that was just an amazing event to because it's the way energy is distributed is mind-numbingly complicated, and everyone there, as I was thinking while I was listening to this, is the general public. There's no need for them to necessarily know, but most people do not know anything about the complexities and the legislation and the layers of complexity in buying and selling electricity. We're kind of the dumb consumers at one end of that enormously complex system, a lot of which is weighted hugely in favor of the fossil fuel industry because of the legacy of it. It's not new. That's what we've been living with for decades. And there are now examples. I mean, one of the people I met there yesterday was the energy correspondent of The Guardian, who has done a very good piece about Drax-B, the thing I was banging on about yesterday. And we're going to do an episode. I won't talk about it now, because we're going to do an episode about it, because it's such a critically important example of how corrupt and corrupting the fossil fuel industry is for all of us, and we are paying for this directly in subsidies to burn biomass, which is now. But I think we should now make sure that the term is so offensive that you're not allowed to say it in public.
Well, Jesse, who's going to edit this, could even bleep it out, couldn't he? So I can totally say it, maybe.
Every time I say, can you bleep it?
I mean, where is fully charged on the spectrum? That sounds like a loaded statement, but you've got industry on one hand, whether it's energy industry or transport industry, and you've got the consumer on the other hand. And again, consumer is another word we try not to say out loud. They are just people.
They're just people, yes.
And we are the kind of membrane between those two things.
Maybe,
so yesterday we fell into the industry side, which we understand well. I mean, I've been in the energy industry for 20 years. But I think what sets Fully Charged, it's not the only channel that does this apart, is that you in particular are a very good communicator and making things a little bit easier to understand. Because if you've been in the room yesterday and you've been talking about REGOs and PPAs and all the industry jargon that we fall back on, it might have might fall on very deaf ears. But the reality is, for a consumer, that the only time that they had anything to do with electricity was if there was a power cut. Or anything to do with their boiler was if it wasn't producing heat instantaneously. So the reality is that's the world we've lived in. Electricity and gas has actually been relatively cheap, and suddenly things are changing and fast. And it's not the only journey that people go on. We've seen many different journeys, but typically people buy an electric vehicle, they then get a charger, they then look at their energy tariff. And then that opens up their eyes to a whole suite of other things, whether it's battery or solar or heat pumps or so on and so forth. We see that time and time again. There are plenty of people who got solar first and then got an EV, but generally now with the mainstream, that's what we're seeing. And I think that's why the electric car is such a powerful tool to attract people, because cars still, it's a mystery to me, but cars still seem to be so emotive for people, so aspirational that it's a big pull. But yesterday's event was very, very interesting because there's always unintended consequences. So someone said about the rush to battery electric vehicles, it's the same as diesel, you're imposing it on us. And I said, well, it's not being imposed, because there are some timelines, but they're not yet. So people are free to buy a diesel today, and they're free to buy petrol engine today. And in some countries, that's going to change in 2030 and 2035. It's not being imposed upon them. The people who are buying them now are buying them now at their own free will, of their own volition. And the sort of diesel scandal, if you like, I'm talking about not about VW, but about Gordon Brown sort of pushing diesels very hard, sort of 15 years or so ago, was part of the fossil fuel industry lobbying very hard to give itself a fresh lick of paint, effectively, to sell combusting cars. Whereas what we've got now with batteries is actually the reverse of that. There's no battery mafia hunting and lobbying hard. In fact, the lobbying is going on from people who are making hybrids and people who are pushing hydrogen. So yesterday's event was a really interesting example of unintended consequences. So in the UK, we have actually had this thing called a REGO for some time, and a very open market for energy companies, which created a surge of new energy entrants, many of which have gone by the wayside, but there are other great ones that remain. And we've worked with electricity and grid energy for many years. OVO, you've mentioned, Octopus. I'm sure I'm going to offend others by not mentioning them, but I can't remember everything in one go. And the reality is that the REGOs were a way in which companies could basically sign up to, I think it's a renewable energy guarantee of origin.
Yeah.
So they could effectively say, yes, the energy you're getting is coming from renewable sources. So a consumer or a human, as we also know them, would go, actually, I know that this company is providing me with renewable energy. But as we all know, there's not separate cables for renewable power and for dirty fossil generated power. So it is a single cable. So it is semantics to a degree, and I think that over time that has been abused. And OVO yesterday effectively said we're not going to fund REGOs anymore. We're going to put that money into insulation and energy efficiency and electrification of heat and education and training. So I think that was a brave move. But it was interesting to hear that kind of unintended consequence is something that probably was initially an earnest
it was a really right? It was done for the best possible reasons. Yeah, but I mean, it was the side consequence of the term renewable. So that is how, when you see how, you just think there are people who are nice and they've got families and jobs and they've got children at school and they go to parent evening, but they actually work for a company like Draxby or for Shell or for, and what they have done is go, oh, well, we're renewable now because we're burning wood, which you can replace by planting more trees. And those trees capture the carbon that we're releasing when we burn the wood. And you go, I don't go, but the government has gone, oh, that's great.
Well, it's really interesting because I think if you are lobbying, you grab whatever raft you can.
Yeah.
The future is electrification broadly. And when the renewable heat incentive came in, and I wasn't inside government at that point, but I was a consultant, like delivering comms for them, communications stuff for them, and promotion for them. When they did that, biomass was very much flavour of the month.
Yeah.
And actually, unintended consequences of that were that actually it really suited rich people with a big pile of wood and also a big pile
and
of
the
the country
space
house,
to have it.
Who were effectively getting paid to install big old biomass boilers. And so from the get-go, it was a dubious scheme. And then, of course, you've got the kind of the large power generation you mentioned through Drax and biomass as well. But what happened was that at that point, it was very much about climate change. And in 2016, air pollution shot up the political agenda.
Yeah.
And at that point, people started to realize that actually, well, burning anything isn't that good. So stand next to a wood barbecue, or if you stand next to an open fire, or if you'll have a gas hob or anything like that, that isn't good for you. It's because it's not good for your respiratory system. And since then, biomass has over time become less relevant, not completely vilified. It sort of still hangs in there, but the term renewable, I remember going to a conference a few years ago and saying, there's a problem with the term renewable because actually it kind of gives off a green sheen, but not everything's renewable in the same way. So our shorthand is stop burning stuff. Anything that burns stuff is not what we want to be doing going forward. So I look forward to your coverage of Drax. I'm sure it'll be very measured and there won't be any rantiness at all.
No, not at all. It'll be very, very balanced. It was interesting that someone said yesterday, someone I spoke to yesterday, because I've now forgotten what they said and who they were.
And Jesse's going to do the bit where he goes, 5 minutes later.
5 minutes later.
5 minutes later.
So it was the woman from Kaluza, whose name I can't remember,
Alice.
but she was lovely.
Alice
from Kaluza, well done, who said the term stop burning stuff is so clear that you don't have to explain it to people. They might not agree with it, but they understand. Whereas the term renewable, well, what does that mean? Does that mean, if I burn it and we grow a tree instead, is that okay? That isn't okay.
And the naming of things is absolutely critical. In fact, politicians love an acronym because you can hide all manner of sins behind an acronym. We're either going to be more obvious, we might talk about this later, about our live shows next year are going to be called Everything Electric. Not because fully charged isn't a great name, but because actually, to some people, it doesn't mean anything.
No.
But Everything Electric is a little bit more run sealed. That's what it says on the tin, as they say in the UK. So, I think the naming of things is absolutely critical.
Yeah.
And I've always found that that's where I've probably made a living, to be honest, is saying to engineers and other policy wonks, people like that, no, actually, that's great, but you need to make it simple. There was a brilliant bit in yesterday's talk, which was basically, a consumer just goes on a switching site. Not every consumer, most of them, they just want to see the colour green. That's all they want to see. They don't even have space for the A to B to G ratings or 5 stars. They just want to see, is it green or is it not green? And at the moment, the reality was, I'm going to sort of mutilate what the guy said very eloquently, I think. He said, is it really green if you're not being energy efficient? Is it really green if you're not cleaning up the whole grid? Is it really green if you're not cleaning up heat as well? And so from an energy supply perspective, they really need to be doing all 3 of those things to be truly green. So there is a lot of greenwashing out there, unfortunately, and it's an absolute minefield, and some very bright people get taken in by it. I see it every day. Oh, this car self-charges or whatever. Let's not go there.
No, let's not go there. But no, just a story that's literally come in this morning, that I just saw this morning, which is very battery related. I'm just excited about it because I'm going to go and see it next year. Janus Trucks in Australia, that we did that episode about, that's actually been very popular. It's had very good views. The swappable 2.5 ton battery packs in large trucks. Well, they've now just announced that they've built a truck that will pull a road train. So I've only ever seen these out in the outback of Australia many years ago, and there's nothing remotely similar to these. Even in the United States, I think it is a particularly Australian thing. It is just the most humongously enormous truck that is pulling between 3 and 4 humongously enormous trailers behind it. And I mean, you couldn't drive one in the UK because you'd eventually have to go through a village, a medieval village. I don't know how on earth they manage these things. They are absolutely vast. Well, they've now developed a 100% electric road train truck. And this is pulling, I don't know what the actual weight is, but hundreds of tons of in this case, copper ore, because it's from a copper mine in South Australia, and it will carry it thousands of miles. And they've got swappable battery stations on the route. So those batteries are charging all the time from solar panels that they put out there, because there's no grid infrastructure. This is out in the bush, So they can swap them in, they're saying under 5 minutes. So that is faster than you can fill a diesel tank in a truck. And then it's pulling these things. Well, this is on a scale of electric vehicle that we really haven't seen, and a power density. And that's what they were absolutely raving about. So we can only do this now because the cells have reached a power density that makes it possible.
Well, that episode itself was jaw-dropping, wasn't it?
Yeah. Well, that was a 95-ton truck. Yeah.
Yeah, we're going back to Sydney next year. We've just announced that. So we're actually going to a bigger venue, to Sydney Showground, a little bit earlier in February, as Everything Electric Australia.
Right.
So you'll be filming that presumably when you...
I will be when I go out there. And what I'm trying to do is bully them into, can you bring one of your big trucks so we can have it next to the stage? Because it's just on a scale that is hard to envisage until you stand next to one and go, oh yeah, that is pretty big.
On the same theme, Australia's just made its announcements about its new electric vehicle policy this morning as well. Or today.
I haven't seen that. No, I saw a headline.
So I haven't read it in detail, but I know that it's different state by state, which I think is quite clever, because I think some states are further ahead than others. But what I saw, it was something like Queensland, for example, is going to go 50% pure electric car sales by 2030, 100% by 2035.
Wow.
So each area is different. I think, what do you call, is it Australian Capital Territory where?
ACT, where Canberra is, yeah.
Canberra is, I think they're going to go 100% by 2030, something like that.
That's a lot easier. It's a much smaller, it's the smallest state.
I didn't see North South Wales on the list. So that, that was it was a great show for us, hugely.
Yeah.
Hugely rewarding show to do to an audience that really, really wanted us to go there. And so we're going back next year. And then we had that hilarious coverage in the Australian, I think, which is fair to say is centrist right-wing Murdoch press.
Yes, I would think it's certainly not a radical tree-hugging, holier-than-thou lefty elitist newspaper.
I mean, the article was just hilarious. I hate cars. I hate car shows. I'm going to hate this. Oh my God, it was amazing. It was 1,000 times better than I thought it was going to be. So that was,
as I started reading it, I went, oh God, here we go. This is the killer. Where's the killer punch coming? And it was absolutely, not very good bit of journalism.
It was crazy. So that's very, very exciting. And then, what I'm seeing more and more of is the battery density stories and the battery chemistry stories. Yeah. So it's the changes, the investment now that's going into batteries and energy storage is on a totally different level. So we were thinking sodium ion might play a role, but now it looks like 2 or 3 of the Chinese manufacturers, including JAC, BYD, and there's another one, are going to have sodium ion batteries in their cars this year.
Right. Yeah.
So that's huge. And then the story this morning, which was CATL.
Yes, I saw that headline. Still haven't read that.
So I'm going to not try and do the acronym, although I do know it, but it's just so deep back in my ear. I think if I try and pull it out, I might injure myself. So I'm not going to do it. But CATL have got a new battery they think is 500 watt-hours per kilogram.
Yeah, which is
and most batteries now are about less than 60% of that density. So if they get that off the ground, they could literally get planes off the ground.
Yeah.
It could absolutely transform the automotive industry as well.
Yes, sorry, I have read about this. So the 500, it is the kind of new benchmark. If you can get 500 watt hours per kilogram, it's basically It's literally twice the energy density of the current best-in-class Tesla batteries. And I think that's a simple thing to understand. Even it doesn't matter what those numbers mean, but essentially you could have a battery half the size and weight of the current Tesla battery with the same range, but actually you'd have more range because it's a lighter car. So, and if you had the same size and weight, you could go twice as far. So you would have a 600-mile range Tesla Model 3 that was no heavier, and no bigger.
I think it's sort of called semi-solid state or something like that, but I don't know the details. But I was just getting used to the fact that LFP has come along. Lots of cars now, LFP, Ford investing in that, Tesla investing in that, Rivian saying they'll only make cars with LFP instead of lithium ion, so no cobalt. And then obviously these new chemistries come along. And I think we're just going to see more and more of that. So that energy density piece is just extraordinary, because I did have someone the other day on LinkedIn, right on cue, just when I thought all these people had gone, or we'd educated them all, say, but how can I do 1,500 miles in an EV in 24 hours? Yeah. And I did respond to him, I think you might be like the edgiest of edge cases. I mean, what percentage of people do that? I said, where are you going? Athens? Where are you trying to get to? And I did say you probably could do it broadly in a Tesla. But anyway, there those things are out there. But the energy density story and the battery chemistry story just keeps on surprising. I think we will see sodium-ion battery enabled electric vehicles at our Amsterdam show in November. I would put I would put a bet on that.
So they'll actually be there.
Someone's writing that down now and holding me to it. It's a small bet, a euro or a pfennig or something like that. But
50 euros, 50 euro cents.
I wouldn't be surprised, because Shanghai Motor Show's on at the moment.
Yeah, no,
Elliot's been
I'm so
there.
excited to see what Elliot's going to see. Yeah,
Polestar P4, and I think by the time this goes out, that might already be out. So that's fascinating. But I was talking to him about the companies he's been talking to. Really extraordinary. I mean, I don't like flying, but he would love to go to Shanghai Motor Show at some point.
No, it does look like proper old-fashioned motor shows. Yeah. But I mean, it's a huge thing with lots of shiny cars, which I last saw 15 years ago in Geneva. I haven't, we don't really have them anymore. Let's be honest, Dan, fully charged live is the nearest you can get to a car show.
That's a very good segue, Robert. We
there
didn't
we
even
go.
talk about this. Brilliant. You become so corporate. So, I mean, I think that for us, we came back from Australia. Well, I didn't go, so that's how much of a team member I am. I still came back.
You were there in spirit.
Yeah. I was scrolling through Twitter, looking at the hashtags, looking at the pictures. We came back and people were saying, this is the new motor show. And we heard that at Silverstone in year one, 2018, when we first did the show. And we were sort of laughed it off. But secretly, I thought, well, I wonder, with a lot of hard work, a lot of hard effort, I wonder if we could get to that place. And I do think we're at that point now where we can kind of lean into that and make that our ambition to have, these motor shows around the world, but sort of motor show version 2.0, basically, which is not just about the motor, is it? Let's be honest, it's about the cable, the hose, the energy, the whole thing, everything that fully charged is sort of synonymous with. And, we invest very heavily in those live sessions and things like Home Energy Advice Team and things like Zero Carbon Kitchen, Electric Launch Pad, Test Drive Program, all the rest of it. So we do feel that we can actually become that now. And that's, incredibly exciting, because I think the motor shows have struggled because they're reliant just on the car companies, aren't they?
Yeah. Yeah.
And if the car companies aren't there, they're in trouble. Whereas ours is much more plural than that. It involves a lot bigger.
I had a great tweet this morning from an Australian who said, I'm booking my tickets for 2 days for fully charged, for everything electric 2024 in Sydney. He's booking it for 2 days because he was going to do one day where he sees all the talks.
Yeah.
And the second day where he goes around, because he said it was so frustrating, like wanting to see a talk, but then noticing that I want to see this car, or I want to talk to these people about my house.
It's 3 days next year, so he can he can take it even more leisurely. He come all 3 days. So for us, as we're developing, I think it's fair to say we did not set off on a journey to create lots of big exhibitions. It just wasn't really the plan. We did the first exhibition purely to help the channel grow.
Yeah.
And to start bringing in some funds and make it sort of wash its own face. So to be where we are now with 6 around the world, and then we've recently said we're going to do London XL in addition
in 2024.
Next March as well, which is really, really exciting. So Farnborough stays. It's a great show, but it moves to October. Right. Harrogate is repeated in May, and next Easter will be Everything Electric London, which is really, really exciting.
Yeah.
So that's good. And then, but I'm struggling to keep up because at the moment, as you know, we're very, very hard at work getting ready for
the
biggest one we've ever produced, which is the 5th UK one at Farnborough. And so we thought it might be useful to get on the podcast and let people have something to listen to while they're driving there and tell them what they can expect to see.
Yeah. Well, it's quite a lot. So go early. That's probably a good idea.
Well, that's probably a good thing. I mean, I think that from my perspective, we're very committed to that venue. We're very committed to being there in the long term. But Farnborough is not a big town, and the roads around it are relatively small. So it's already been straining under the sheer volume of people that come in, particularly on the Friday and Saturday morning of the show. So if you're driving there now and you're listening to me, I apologize in advance. There are some queues to get in. I guess that when things get quite big, that can happen. So I apologize for that. So be patient. It will be worth it when you get in. But the show actually is opening at 9:30 now this year. So we've moved the opening a little bit earlier. So yeah, I think it does. If you want to see the opening stuff, if you want to see Robert and Jack and Imogen and Helen at the door as you come in, that we do that at sort of 9:30, and then. But there's some interesting stuff going on right at the beginning. In fact, I just did my calendar last night and I've looked at yours. Yeah. And the first day is particularly busy because this is going out, I think, on Wednesday next week. So we're recording it on Wednesday the week before.
Wednesday the week before, yes. I'm trying to remember where we are. Yeah.
So tomorrow, but before that Wednesday, we announce a couple of new things. There's about 20 cars coming that haven't been seen, I don't think. Certainly not our show, and most of them not in the UK. So the big one we're just about to announce is that BYD are coming. That we've already announced that, but they're bringing the Dolphin with them, which to the uninitiated have just stumbled into this is actually a car.
Yes,
not a Dolphin, and is their kind of sort of one of their more smaller, more affordable cars, which obviously people are absolutely crying out for, and that is their European launch of that car.
So that's not even been seen in Norway then? I mean,
no, it's the European launch, and it's going to be in Harrogate as well 3 weeks later. And so I think you're doing some press activities to unveil that. We've also got, and Jesse might need to cut this bit out, but we've also got the GWM Aura. I'm not sure if they've settled on that yet, but that's also being debuted as well at Farnborough. And that is the GWM's sort of take on the sort of Porsche Panamera.
Right.
So that's going to be a really interesting one to see.
Yeah.
And then in addition to that, there's a whole range of other things like, BYD will be there with Atto 3. I think it's the first time most people will have seen the Hyundai Ioniq 6.
Yeah, the Ioniq 6, yes.
Ioniq 6.
I haven't seen that,
MG4 is obviously, we're seeing on the roads now, but there's been many shows where it's been present. Polestar P3.
Right.
Very excited about that. An Italian-American brand that most people won't have heard of, but we think is going to make a big impact. It's a premium car, but it is incredibly good-looking. It's the Aera SUV, which is AEHRA. So we're revealing that as well, our electric launchpad feature. First time, I think, the Fisker Ocean was certainly been fully charged live. We've seen it in America, a great-looking vehicle. First time for the Jeep Avenger, which I think is just won Car of the Year with someone. I can't remember who. I know Jack liked that. The lovely little McMurtry bubble car.
Oh, it's so good that's going to be there.
That's going to be there. Very excited about that. On the complete opposite end of the spectrum, a car that could crush that is the Munro Mark 1. I don't know if you've seen the rushes for the episode.
I've seen the rushes. I just saw a rough cut of it. Yeah, it does look
amazing.
very
which is could probably destroy a defender. It's from Scotland. It's made from girders, basically.
That's right.
It's an incredible vehicle. That's the first time I think that's been on show. Vauxhall Astra, the
I think that is so
500e Scorpionus. Well, the Astra is
it's just
a car for
like
normal people.
About the most common car in the UK and in Europe. Actually, it's an incredibly common car. And if they're doing a decent electric version of that, it is.
Yeah, so that's exciting. The A-Bar 500e Scorpionissima. That doesn't mean anything to me. But it sounds good.
So that's a Fiat 500 that goes faster.
Yeah,
with
it's got a real sting in the tail, I think.
It will have
you can
stripes.
deduce from that name. And then we have the Ford F-150 Lightning there.
In the UK?
Yes, there's one. I don't know if it's on sale yet. I think it might be an import.
Right.
The Lotus Electra.
Right.
A Rivian R1T. Smart #1. I think that's cool. How they call it? Smart One #1 Brabus Edition.
Right.
Subaru Solterra, which Jack quite liked as well.
Yes.
And the McMurtry Sperling, which is that incredibly fast car that did the Goodwood hill climb in about
that sucks itself to the ground.
Yes. Yeah. That's going to be there, and that's going to be on my energy stand actually.
Brilliant.
They've had a bit of a coup, and they're working with them. So, and that's just the cars we think have either not been seen before or barely been seen. I think there's going to be a few hundred on site. So then there's tons of test drives.
Yeah.
Tons of test drives, more than we've ever run before, which is great. Electric Launchpad, which is where we're showing some of the new stuff. Electric Alley, which is where we're showing some of the slightly older stuff, or the second-hand vehicles.
Yeah.
We're really super aware of the fact people are struggling. And so having second-hand vehicles there, and actually I would pitch the show as a really good thing to go along and work out how you can save energy, or you can buy these things more cheaply. I think why the things like the BY Dolphin are so emblematic is that we need these cheaper technologies to start coming through. I think we're at the early stages of that now. On the car front, there's just tons to see and do. So that's really, really exciting. And many of those things will be at Harrogate as well. Not every single one, but many of those things will be at Harrogate 3 weeks later as well. And then if you're not quite as into... Well, also on cars, we've got an area called Electric and Eclectic, which is being curated by Felten, which is all about electric conversions.
Yeah. And that's there's always big crowds around those because they are amazing looking.
Yeah.
Extraordinary.
There's a commercial vehicle zone.
Right.
The first day is particularly set up for business. So it's called Fully Charged Business.
Right.
And in fact, the opening electric fireside chat you're doing on day one is with BBC Dragon's Den's Deborah Meaden. Talk all about sustainability and business with her, which I think I'm really looking forward to hearing that. If no one else is, I'm really looking forward to that. No, she's great.
Looking forward to it. I'm going to admit it, marginally nervous. Because
she's going to say, I'm not interested.
Yeah.
I'm out. Yeah.
I'm out. But she's, it's her and Sir Patrick Stewart. So I've interviewed Sir Patrick Stewart, who was the most charming, down-to-earth. But before I went, when I was there and we did the interview, he was fantastic. But I was very nervous beforehand just because I thought, he's really proper. Everyone's heard of Sir Patrick Stewart. And he's got that voice and that commanding thing. I got to his house and he just said, I've just put the kettle on. Come and have a cup of tea. It was so normal. But I'm also in that state a bit with Deborah Meaden.
I think she, for what it's worth, I think she's fantastic. I've been watching Dragon's Den for a number of years. But what might be less familiar to people is she's also doing a podcast now called The Big Green Money Show.
Yeah,
she's been doing that for about a year. That's really good, actually. So she's not just she's not a greenwasher. She's genuinely
she
passionate
knows her
about
stuff,
sustainability. Yeah. So that'll be really interesting to see you two have a chat on day 2. I don't know if you're even aware of this, but you're going to be doing an actual fireside chat with an incredible guy who I think you're going to get on really well with. Have you seen the YouTube channel Just Have a Think?
Yes.
Which is amazing. He's fantastic. So Dave is going to be doing the electric fireside chat with you on Saturday.
Brilliant.
He is fantastic. And I wrote to him and said, have you heard of Fully Charged? And he came back and said some lovely words about how he loves it. And I said, well, likewise, I absolutely love what you do. So I think your conversation with him will be fascinating. That's on the Saturday morning.
Very good.
And then on the Sunday morning, there's an electric fireside chat with the guys from Bosch, BOSH apostrophe, which is the plant-based chefs who are themselves huge influencers in the kind of the plant-based world.
Yeah.
So if you're not into cars, there's just loads of other stuff going on. Like we've got the zero carbon kitchen.
Yeah.
I think you and I are going to be doing some cooking together.
We are cooking there. We've agreed on your wife and I have agreed on what we're cooking. I think she quite fancied it. She thought, I wonder if I can get Dan to cook this afterwards. But it's really. Yeah. I made it here the other night. It is really good. They know how to mix stuff together. So I use their recipe.
I'm not renowned for my cooking ability, but I'm right behind you, Robert. Right behind you with some tofu
with a very sharp knife. Yeah. Slightly
so yes, a plant-based cooking arena.
That's such
where we're
fun
going to cook on electric induction. It's going to be powered by a Hyundai Ioniq 5.
Isn't that great?
They'll be cooking all the time. The Bosch guys are going to kind of headline it. I think Imogen and Helen are doing some cooking.
Yeah.
Against each other, I think Imogen got a bit overly competitive over the brownies that they're going to make. I think.
I can imagine. Oh my goodness, the sparks
I think
could
Jack's
fly.
Cooking. I think so. I think that'll be a lot of fun. We have the home energy advice team again, which we're working on with Ovo Energy, which is so
always
packed.
Amazingly popular, isn't it? It's always a big.
I mean, there's so much home energy tech at the show now. I mean, that really has been the huge growth story of our last 2 years. Really, as people start to be genuinely interested in, okay, how am I going to replace my boiler, or how am I going to do things differently going forward?
So that enormous hall, Dan, because it is vast when you go in that big. I mean, we've shown it many times when we've sort of arrived there before anything's in there. But is that now? That's now fairly chocker full of.
So that 12,000 meters space is completely full. And then we've got about double the space outside, completely full as well. So it's about a 4-acre site, I think, from memory. So it's a big. Right. It's a big show. We probably can't get it much bigger at Farnborough, as far as we're going to probably grow another acre and maybe a few more thousand attendees.
We'd have to stop the private jets taking off and use the runway. That's the only way we can.
Well, that could be great. So, it really is, incredibly exciting. But we love to freshen it up each year. There are 50 plus live sessions. Yeah, there's plenty to come and see, and as well as I'm doing a couple of sessions, but you're doing a few. But we also got Elliot coming from China.
Yes, which is
We've got Ricky coming from California.
I mean, those two just are. That is such a joy, because that's having now met Elliot in Australia. He's such a dude, and he'll be I just know he's just going to be like an excited puppy running around. Well, of course, and he hasn't seen his own family. He's visiting his own family. He hasn't seen them for, I think, 5 or 6 years.
I think he's more excited about the show, if I'm honest. But no, he's a good guy. Well, I've not met him yet. So you only met him. Really I've still not met him. Can you imagine? I speak to him regularly, but I've not met him in person.
Exactly.
But, obviously, Jack and Helen will be there. Imogen and Andy, Emily, myself.
That's good.
So
good.
We've got a really, really good crew, brilliant back crew behind the scenes as well that operate it all, and also will be filming fair bit of it. It's really, really exciting, but it's been extraordinarily busy, and also to be honest, the economic conditions have not been fantastic in the UK. So we're glad to still be growing. We're thankful, frankly, but it has been over the winter months quite tough to get hold of cars. The car companies, and people have struggled. So this time, slightly controversially in the program notes, as we did in Australia, we actually list who's declined to be there.
Right.
From a car company perspective, because we were getting quite bored with people not abusing
everyone wants to know why they're not there.
Haranguing our staff, and we're saying, why isn't such and such there? Did you ask them? We go, oh boy.
Boy,
did we ask them? We asked them.
We were on our knees outside their office, begging them
in triplicate. And so we don't mean to, be snarky with these companies or get them in trouble. They've got challenges, principally the economy, secondly supply chain. But we see the really progressive ones are there. You've got to be in it to win it, right? Those companies are there, and there's some others who aren't there, and you fear for them. It's the big event of the year where you will sell a lot of electric cars. And of course, if you're not there, someone else will benefit in your absence.
In your place.
We've seen it before. So we are actually going to put in the show guide. Again, it's not snarky. It's just so people can understand that we asked we asked everyone.
Yeah.
And we actually asked everyone to come. Do you want to be part of the test drive program and exhibit? And if you do, that's fantastic. There's a cost to that because we obviously invest heavily in the show. But if you just want to put your cars on Electric Alley for free, you can do that.
Right.
So only if they turn down both of those options, including the free one, do we say they decline to participate. Because if they just decline to get involved because of cost, we understand that some of the car companies are quite hard time. That wouldn't be fair. But if they decline to come, even on the basis of the free option, we actually kind of open about it. As I say, it's not to get anyone in trouble or to cause the issues, but I think it's important that people know it's not our incompetence. We're not asking companies, we ask everyone. And as I say, so we're very proud of the lineup. But we always want. Well, hopefully next year we'll have more. I think at the London show that could be another level. We could see even more companies at the London show next year as well. So,
but I mean, it does also. I think you're absolutely right, and I think you've done it exactly the right way. That it's not a question of shaming people, but it does reveal the focus of the business. That if their focus is on maintaining diesel sales, then they're not going to want to come to fully charged live, are they? And there is an element of that in those companies, in the old incumbent companies with their huge legacy they've got to deal with.
I have actually huge sympathy. Whenever we've been
really difficult,
critical of that company, I can't remember their name. I can't remember their name. They were the car in front once. I can't remember their name. Anyway, when we've been critical of that company, it's not been a case of indulging in some sort of schadenfreude. It's called wake up and be involved, because if you're not involved, you've got a problem. And that's more where we're coming from. We really don't want to see any companies go under, but we have reached the inescapable conclusion that is what we're going to see. Because if you kind of, if you extend the trend lines forward, if you look at what's going on, there are X amount of cars sold in the world every year. I think it varies from sort of 65 to 80 million every year. There's only so many sales to go around. And we may even enter an era of fewer cars because cars last longer, car sales that is, and they're more shareable, right? So we may enter a time where those numbers actually go down.
Shrink,
obviously, typically as the population of the world goes up, they continue to go up, but that might change a little bit. So there's a finite amount of car sales to play with. Tesla is likely to produce 1.8 to 2 million cars in this calendar year.
Yeah.
BYD is likely to produce 1.2 million battery electric vehicles in this calendar year. You can see then, can't you? Other companies are coming in.
Yeah.
That share has got to come from somewhere else. So I always think it's a shame when car companies can't be at our show or be out there, fully focused on a battery electric vehicle. But they are very much, as someone else, a wise man, David Hunt, I think it was, from Fully Charged Recruitment, says, they're very much, a fox that's trying to chase two rabbits and will catch neither.
Yes. Oh, that's a good one. That's a good one of those.
And that's, that's a great shame. So we actually want to be inclusive. We want all the car companies to work with us. So it's really not a matter of shaming them. But as I said, I was getting quite bored with people saying, "Did you ask this company?" Going, yes.
Yeah. Yes, we did.
We did ask them.
Yeah. But I mean, I think it's something you and I have certainly talked about, and I've talked about with other people on the podcast, is that, Roger Atkins, the amount of people that I've now spoken to in our small micro niche who say, look, this is the Chinese are coming. They are going to be making these cars. In the United States, that isn't the case, but they're also the way that the new acts that I can't remember, the IRA Act, what's it called? The thing,
Inflation Reduction Act.
Inflation Reduction Act. But the way
I
that's
do the
pitched,
acronyms and the names and the faces, and you do the numbers. Okay.
But the way that is pitched is absolutely aimed at the slightly cheaper end of the electric car market, and they're all now looking at vehicles coming out in the United States that will be cheaper than the cheapest petrol car.
Yeah,
and that is going to happen in the next 12 months. Yeah. And that, so forget China for a moment. That's what's happening in America. You can't get a government grant to buy a Rivian or a high-end Tesla. They're too expensive, which I think is so good. I'm so pleased it's that way around. Because if you can afford a Rivian, all power to you. You know, that's great.
Yeah.
But you don't need taxpayer money to allow you to buy it for slightly cheaper. But if you're on a lower income and you can then afford to buy a cheaper electric car that will by definition be cheaper to operate, that's a positive benefit to the whole country.
It's absolutely extraordinary. I don't think we've got time today, and some of it we'll discuss on panels actually, because I'm doing a session about which car company is going to end up in the car graveyard. But we are now at the point where we are moving chairs around on the deck of the Titanic.
Yeah.
That is the point we have reached. It's a sad fact. If you're not in the game now, I think you're really going to struggle. No matter who you are, I think you're really, really going to struggle, because a lot of people, more than the car industry realize, want a fresh looking car, a new looking car with a fresh digital lick of paint, that are gravitating towards the Hyundai Ioniq 5 and the Kia EV6 and the Polestar 2. And that's bad news for the older brands. And the older brands have tried to react with Cupra, Volvo becoming Polestar. We're seeing a lot of that. Mustang. So, they've tried to react to that. But there's this extraordinary thing going on. And the article I read most recently, which sort of sent chills through my spine, is that China's strategy has been in plain sight for over 20 years.
Yeah. Yes.
And it's now, we just have to watch it play out now. I hear people carping about it, but I'm like, you just need to get used to it. This is what's going to play out now. If you have a moan on LinkedIn or Twitter, it's not going to make a difference, right?
Yeah.
This is what's going to play out. It's Roger Atkins would say it's a banquet of consequences. That is what we're seeing now. And I saw recently that appetite for European cars in China has gone down significantly, and they're buying far more of their own now.
Yeah.
And China was, of course, where the European car companies, they made it their second home.
It's kind of what bolstered them for the last 20 years. Yes. They've been selling so many in China. Yeah.
It's going to be quite sort of sad, I think, some of this. It's exciting time, it's a sad time, but you can see it all on the Fully Charged show. You like that?
Yeah, I love that.
Switch gear. And you can see it all Fully Charged live,
That's very true.
I've got some
Charged live,
dude.
Yes, I know. You've got a hard out. I know that. You've got to go and do things. It's been really good though. What's great is every now and then my skill of being marginally ignorant of everything going on around me pays off. So I've actually learnt what I'm doing at the show. In this episode.
Saves us having a briefing, right?
Yeah, I'm really, really excited about it. No, it's going to be amazing. But anyway, that was great to go through that. And the cars that are there, mind-boggling. Absolutely amazing.
Yeah, it's really...
And congrats to the team. I know the team have worked incredibly hard to
phenomenal, because they came back from Australia and I think they were allowed about 3 hours off.
Yeah.
And then that was it. And then they've got another show after this. So we really can't wait to go to Harrogate as well. That's another...
No, I'm looking forward to that very much. Yeah.
Afterwards. Brilliant. But thanks, Robert. I will see you in Farnborough.
See you very soon. Yes. Yeah. Alarmingly soon. Anyway, that's it. I'm not going to
on that
fancy stuff. You know all about the subscribe and the tell your mates and all that. But as always, if you have been, from Dan, Caesar and I, thank you for listening.